I watched the newest Pixar movie Elemental, and despite having extremely low expectations, I do admit that I actually loved the movie. Sure, it isn't one of Pixar's best movies, but it is a very enjoyable story nonetheless. But before we talk about the movie itself in more detail, I wanna ask you a question. What are the two core themes of Disney's animation in recent years? And I am not just talking about movies for the big screen. The first is a generational problem. Kids suffering from their parents' expectations, dreaming of something different for themselves, trying to be themselves and searching for whatever it means to be themselves. You can think of Luca and Turning Red as good examples. The second theme is immigration. More and more main protagonists in animation are second generation immigrants. Again, Turning Red, where the main character is a Chinese Canadian girl with an overprotective and conservative mother. Or modern Disney Channel shows like The Owl House or Amphibia, where main characters Luz and Anne respectively are children of immigrants from the Dominican Republic and Thailand. Elemental has both, as it continues traditions set by Disney in recent years. The main character Amber is the daughter of immigrants who moved from Fireland, which is a play on Ireland obviously, to Element City in pursuit of better life and better opportunities. Her parents face a lot of discrimination from other elements. They can't even rent a place to live because of xenophobia. So they're forced to build their own place in a segregated area, a place which later becomes their shop. But even many years later, they and their daughter Amber still encounter casual racism from other elements. The movie is based on the director's personal experience. The director Peter's son was born in New York City in the 1970s to a family of immigrants from South Korea. So this is the director telling his very personal story, just like the director of Turning Red. Element City is obviously an allegory to New York City. It is actually very nice to see that so many different people now find a way to express themselves in animation, whether it's people of color or people of different sexual orientations and gender identities. As for the actual movie, I thought it was pretty nice. The main character Amber is a very likable protagonist, and it was interesting to follow her. However, I can't say the same about Wade. He was a little irritating, to be honest. Animation is very creative and I really enjoyed character design. Just like Turning Red, it has noticeable anime influence. Just look at the shape of the noses, especially Amber's. These days, anime influence on the industry is obviously increasing and becoming more and more evident, simply because anime is becoming less and less niche. I remember back when I was in elementary school, we used to make fun of anime. Nowadays it is a pretty hard task to find someone who has never seen anime. Animation is colorful, vibrant, and the city looks just fantastic. I like the fact that Pixar animation is becoming more and more diversified. Turning Red, for instance, had a look reminiscent of shows like Steven Universe and Gravity Falls, which many people like to call CalArts. Lightyear was ultra realistic, and Elemental doesn't even have human characters, which means animators can come up with any rules for their world and characters. I still wait till Disney or Pixar make a full-length 2D movie and release it in theaters. Elemental has a lot in common with another Disney movie, Zootopia, which remains my favorite Disney film to this day. They have very similar settings, a big metropolis populated by creatures of many different species, and very similar stories about intolerance, xenophobia, and main characters who are very different at first glance, come from different backgrounds but have to work together, and while they work together they find out that they have much more in common than they would even think. They find out that they still can work together and be friends despite all their differences. In the case of Elemental, not just friends, but lovers. Elemental is a rom-com, and I can't really remember the last time a Disney or Pixar animated movie was focusing on a romantic relationship between the characters, and romance being such an essential part of the plot. Tangled probably 13 years ago. Elemental reminded me not only of Zootopia but also MLP, a New Generation movie. Similar vibes, even though the stories are very different. but messages is pretty much universal across all three movies. I really like the parallel between the water leak in the canal and the relationship between Amber and Wade. When they started growing fond of each other, Amber found a way to seal the breach using glass. But after Amber's emotional burst and her breakup with Wade, the glass barrier breaks and nearly an entire fire town goes underwater. What I didn't like about Elemental is how rushed the story felt. Amber meets Wade practically the next day. They fall in love with each other. One day later, Amber decides that she doesn't want to inherit her father's dream and wants instead to pursue her own life goals. Maybe if the movie got rid of the romantic subplot, it would be better. In Zootopia, Judy and Nick were just partners and then became friends. Zootopia didn't have any tone or pacing issues. It was a nearly perfect movie, and I still insist it was Disney's best from the last decade. Unfortunately, Elemental is already a financial disaster. After the first weekend, it only brought around $50 million, with an alleged budget of almost $200 million. As you can guess, there is absolutely no way this movie won't be a catastrophe. And that's actually really bad. Elemental is not a top Pixar movie, but I felt very emotional, and the characters and their struggle deeply touched me, even though I don't share Amber's problems with her identity and her family. Pixar used all the cheap methods to squeeze emotion, and in the most cases it actually worked. Elemental is a genuinely nice little movie. What concerns me now is that instead of more original content, Disney will insist on more sequels, prequels, and spin-offs of Pixar's most popular movies of recent years. Toy Story 5 is already on its way, as we know. I won't be surprised if we see Up 2 or Ratatouille 2 in the near future. Disney already used a short movie about Carl from Up called Carl's Date to lure more people into theaters to watch Elemental. That strategy doesn't work apparently, since the numbers are surprisingly very low. Maybe the box office would have been better if Disney released this movie 1 week later, instead of directly competing with The Flash. But to be completely honest, Flash's numbers are not really impressive either. Financial flop of Elemental and other original films will definitely encourage Disney to invest heavier into already established franchises. Anyway, in my opinion, Elemental definitely deserves a solid 9 out of 10 for emotions and for great animation.